Hello again. This is Mike Walsh. I'm the mayor for the town of East Hartford, and I bring to you the answers to last week's question. I think, as everybody knows by now, we have a program called Ask the Mayor. That's where the residents of the town send in questions to my office. I gather them up and I sit here usually on a Tuesday taping for Wednesday, and I provide the answers. So we actually have 11 questions today, and they run the gamut. They're all over the board. So bear with me. Some of them will be quick answers, others are a little bit longer. So that being said, question number 105 comes from Alan. And he says, how does the town expect people to pay the new property tax amounts? Now, I've responded directly to Alan, and what I normally do is I take what his old assessment was under the old mill rate of 49.35, what his new assessment is under the new mill rate of 41. Then I figure out if he has any cars, and then I look at his age, see if he's on the senior program, and try to give him a complete picture. In this particular case, I did that separately, so I won't do it today. But what I will tell you generally is, number one, when I ran for this office, daily I spoke about the coming revaluation and the fact that the COVID flight from the cities has caused East Hartford to become, and I think this is a good thing, a place where people want to be. So our houses are dramatically up in value. A house that was $100,000 is now $150,000. A house that was $150,000 is now $200,000. A house that was $200,000 is now $250,000. In some cases, $300,000. And for those rare houses that were upwards of $250,000 to $300,000, they are now selling for $400,000. I just looked at the real estate transactions in the paper, and there's a house on Hill Street which sold for $410,000. So kudos to East Hartford, but that is not good news for those of us who pay the taxes. In a year where there's revaluation, and revaluation is a state mandated process that happens every 5 years, we have to, by law, assess the value of every residential property and every commercial property. Commercial properties did not go up as high or as quickly as residential properties. So you had a shift of taxation away from commercial on to residential. The mill rate went down, but it did not go down enough to offset those. There was no tax increase. The town balanced its budget on the same $136.1 million as it did in the prior year. So heretofore, for 3 years, we've held the line on taxes. So much so that the municipal fiscal indicators came out. That is produced by the Office of Policy and Management, sometimes referred to as the Governor's Budget Office. And East Hartford dropped in its taxation from number 109 of 169 municipalities last year to 117. And to give you an idea, our per capita tax rate is $2,670, virtually identical to Manchester. And the highest is Westport at over $7,038, roughly 3 times the taxation rate. Now, I certainly don't want to compare East Hartford to Westport, but if you compare us to the other 169 communities, our taxes are 14% below both the average and the median of taxes in Connecticut. So again, East Hartford is number 117 of 169 towns. That places us in the bottom 3. And in the next question, I'll explain a little bit about why that is. So back to Alan. In addition to me explaining this since I was elected almost on a daily basis, and I'm simply telling everybody this was coming, the town, with the cooperation of the town council, has increased senior tax relief for those on fixed incomes, and it's a very generous fixed income, to $900 credit off your annual property or motor vehicle taxes. There's also a reduced mill rate on car tax relief that came to us from the state. There's also a new $300 Connecticut 1040 tax credit that you'll apply for when you file your return in April of 23. And there's also $750 of new child tax credit also provided by the state, compliments of the good work of our legislative delegation. So to Alan, 1, unfortunately we knew it's coming. 2, your house is worth significantly more. And in a state that has ad valorem, which is Latin for added value, as the method of taxation, you now unfortunately have to shoulder a slightly larger portion of the overall tax bill, recognizing the town of East Hartford has not raised taxes, 136.1 million the last 2 years in a row, and recognizing that we are 117 in terms of taxation on the list of 169. So those are facts that some people may not like, but they're things that I manage off of because I was the former finance director, as most people know. Question number 106 comes from June. She talks about the calming of traffic on Burnside Avenue, and I think she means the road diet has been fairly successful, but the time has come to repaint the pavement markings, especially between Burnside Avenue and Scotland Road. And I don't disagree. That is a state road, June, so I will provide your comments along to the state DOT, Department of Transportation, and see what we can do as far as repainting the lines. Question number 107, comes from Beth, and she says, thank you for the answers that you gave me last week. I think you missed one of my questions, which was what is being done to control our mill rate, which she feels is one of the highest in the state. Statistically, Beth is right. Our mill rate is one of the highest in the state. But let's unpack that, because if you used mill rate alone, you wouldn't have a complete picture about what it means to live in East Hartford, enjoy the services that we have, and pay the tax bill. Seconds ago, you heard me explain to Alan that we're number 117 statistically in terms of how we pay taxes compared to other communities. But I'm also going to tell you, I personally believe, there's no book out there that can prove this, that we provide the richest set of services in the state of Connecticut. So what you have to do is you can't just cite the mill rate. You have to look at the value of our houses. You have to look at the mill rate from which we use to raise money based on the value of the houses, or the mill rate, or the grand list, which also includes commercial property, and then finally the services. So I look at it as a three-legged stool: values, mill rate, services. So what we've done to control our mill rate has a lot to do with the lack of grand list growth. Looking forward, we're adding apartments on Silver Lane that will provide us with new annual tax revenue. We're adding 2.9 million square feet of warehouse spacing on the old Rentschler Field. That will provide us $4 million of new permit money, 4.5 million in new tax revenue, and also provide, those two projects alone will provide some needed foot traffic. So we are trying to grow the grand list, Beth. We are trying to create a different vibe here in East Hartford. But in the short term, as I had mentioned to Alan, taxes were not raised, but because you are a homeowner, you will share in some of those taxes. You also said, as a lifelong resident with retirement looming, hopefully, you're concerned you won't be able to afford to stay here. And that's also a good point. I would point out two things. When you hit 65, if you own your own house, check the assessor's website. There's $900 of annual tax relief available to you if you're under a certain income, and the income's very generous. There's also veterans tax credits. So Beth, you live in a great community. That's my perspective. Lots of services, and when I say services, curbside waste collection, not offered in Glastonbury. Full-time paramedic, what we call advanced life support intercept, not offered in Glastonbury. And I know I'm picking on Glastonbury a little bit. Street lights, sidewalks, not available in most parts of Glastonbury. Glastonbury's tax rate is 48% higher than East Hartford, with many, many more services available to East Hartford. So I don't want to be an East Hartford snob, but I like it here because of the services, because of the convenience, because of the diversity, and because of the lower taxes. Now, that's not a license to spend. That's just a statistical fact that how we compare to the rest of the communities, 169 of them, is a lower tax rate, bottom third, and significantly more services. And I'll go so far as to say the most services in the state of Connecticut. So hopefully I've answered your question, Beth. The next question, which is number 108, comes from Steve. He says, Mayor Mike, we've had 2 rollovers, a postal worker hurt, a pole taken down, lights out at Brewer Street, and more aggressive driving throughout town than ever before. In my opinion, it's time to increase the number of cops on traffic patrol and step up enforcement actions. Do you agree, and what does the timeline look like? So, Steve, we've already been doing that. Operation Safe Streets kicked off about 2.5 months ago. And to give you an idea, in 2020, in the month of May, we issued 75 moving violation and warnings. In 2021, we upped it to 300, and in 2022, we upped it to 600. So we went from 75 to 300 to 600. In June, back in 2020, we issued 190 moving violations. 2021, up to 350. 2022, up to 400. So we've issued over 1,000 moving violations in the month of May and June 2022 compared to 265. So a 4-fold increase. But we're going to do more. I've spoken to the chief. We're going to get additional radar devices, and we're going to deploy those in patrol cars moving forward. So we will, in essence, have more officers looking at this in the near future. Also, I've taken the initiative to create a traffic calming committee. That is simply an extension of my office. We regularly have discussions about problems in town and how to solve them. In this particular case, we're going to add 3 to 4 members of the community, and we're going to say, what are you seeing? Now, we're not going to deploy stop bumps or what they call speed bumps or speed humps, and I'll talk about that in a minute for a variety of reasons. But we're going to look at community things that we can do. Social media increases. We're going to look at additional either stop lights or stop signs. We're going to look at, the little green man that stands on the side of the road with a flag and says, he holds a sign, drive like your children live here. Those are the types of things we're going to try to involve in the community. This is not unique to East Hartford. This is not unique to Connecticut. This is a nationwide epidemic. For some reason, we've lost our minds when we're behind the wheel because we drive too fast, we ignore stop signs, and it's just a shame. There can't be police officers everywhere. Our town engineer, Doug Wilson, says there's 3 ways to properly, he calls them the 3 E's: enforcement, education, and engineering. Those are the ways we calm traffic. We can't do it overnight. We need the help of the community, but we'll be trying all 3 of those through our traffic calming committee. So Steve may not be the complete answer, but we're going after more traffic, motor vehicle violations. We're going to have some planning, but we need the help from the community. Submission 109 comes from Susan Neep. She was our former mayor. And how can we access the East Hartford daily arrest logs as they do in Glastonbury, Farmington, and Simsbury? So Mrs. Neep, that is on the way. Our website for the police is in the process of getting an upgrade, and daily police logs will be posted, much like those communities you cite. In the meantime, if you would like them, I would encourage you to call Mac Hawkins at the East Hartford Police Department. He's our deputy chief, or Chief Scott Sansom directly. I have already forwarded your email to them, and if you're desirous of getting them before the website is updated, by all means, they are empowered to give that to you. So thank you, Mrs. Neep, for reaching out, and I hope you're doing well. Submission number 110 comes from Mary. Can you do anything to remove the abandoned railroad tracks at School Street near Park Avenue? In Mary, unfortunately, the answer is no. I can't do a lot. First off, they are not abandoned. And how I know this is I had to call through the Department of Transportation, I called the department that regulates the rail lines in that area, because I had a number of rail cars stuffed with garbage outside Bakery on Main. So we had to get those moved down as a quality of life issue. So unfortunately, while they're used infrequently, they are not abandoned. And it's nearly an act of God to get the owners of those rail lines, even if they're very inactive, to give them up, because there's always the thought that somehow rail will come back into the neighborhood. And that's true in East Hartford or any of the surrounding communities. So they are not abandoned, Mary. They are still being used, albeit infrequently. And the town does not have a lot of tools in its toolkit to get those to become abandoned. The next question is from Nazreen. and it's a continuation of an item from a previous administration. When will the sidewalk from Summerfield's apartments that take you to Silver Lane Elementary School get paved? Now, the longer story is Representative Henry Jenga. Mayor Marcia LeClaire was in regular contact with the State Department of Transportation in the 5 and 15 work that was being done. This is a budding property to the off-ramp that comes onto Silver Lane near the Silver Lane School. I reached out to Mark Rolfe, he's the Deputy Commissioner at DOT in Nazarene. I said, hey, listen, I'm new to this, but Representative Jenga, Mayor Marcia LeClaire had an agreement with DOT as that construction work completed to either repave or redo those sidewalks. I have not received an answer back from him. I sent that this morning, but I will continue to follow up on that, Nazarene. And the object would be to get those done by DOT sooner rather than later. But we'll keep on it, and I won't make any promises other than to say I will follow up on it. Question number 112 comes from Sherry. What's going to happen with the Church Corners Inn? And candidly, Sherry, the answer is I think I have a pretty good idea, but it's subject to town council approval. So there was a subcommittee meeting of a small group of the town council called Real Estate Acquisition and Disposition. That was about a week ago. And they've decided to forward the recommendation to the town council to seriously consider allowing the town to buy Church Corners Inn, to settle Main Street for a variety of reasons, and to relocate the tenants in that while we rebuild it into likely affordable housing. Currently there's 54 units. They're not ideal units. We would come back with a plan to redo those to about 24 units that would each have bathrooms and full kitchens, a much better situation that's there today, but that will take at least 2, probably 3 years given the market we're in. So I hope that provides you with the background. I know you are a tenant there or a resident there. We are probably 3 months away after the town council gives us the opportunity to buy it. We then will assist you using intercommunity mental health and our health department. There's some uniform relocation that will be considered on a case-by-case basis. The goal is to restabilize that particular unit without hurting the residents as well. Hopefully that answers your question. And then what to do about the noise level from the bar, that will take care of itself if and when the town council authorizes the administration to move forward and buy that. Until then, we regularly send the police, the health department, and inspections and permits in there to try to quiet it down, but I don't believe that that's going to give you any remedy of comfort really until the town owns the building. Submission number 113 comes from Mary. What safety measures are the town taking to keep our pools safe during non-open hours? And Mary, I can't comment on that. We had the unfortunate incident of a young East Hartford student drowned in the pool about a week ago, and there's an ongoing police investigation. What I can tell you is the town takes its pool safety seriously at all 5 outdoor locations and both indoor locations. We do have protocols. Those will be reviewed and discovered as part of a likely investigation and perhaps litigation. But at the end of the day, because this just happened a week ago, for the purposes of Ask the Mayor, at the advice of our attorneys, I'm unable to comment on that, so I apologize for that. If you want to reach out, come into my office and speak with me directly, I'll be able to reveal a little bit more, but that's the up to the moment development that I can give to the community. Submission number 114 comes from Betsy. Can my 92-year-old neighbor get a paper copy of the newsletter? And the answer is, Betsy, I'm hoping you can help your neighbor. The town of East Hartford bought specific software in order to make this an electronic version, and in often cases it's 20 to 30 pages long. Most of it's in color with links. So it really is ineffective if we print it out. It's quite manual and costly. And while I'm sympathetic to your 92-year-old neighbor, the newsletter isn't really designed to be printed out because there are so many hot links. What I can tell you is there any way to get your 92-year-old neighbor to the library to view this online? It's a really rich document that Kate from my office has done excellent work on. And when I say rich, a lot of hot links, it takes you to a lot of other websites, it takes you to a lot of other materials, and we would not be doing the newsletter justice by attempting to print it out. So Betsy, I'm hoping 1, you can help. 2, maybe a family member can get a tablet over there so that she can enjoy the hot links. Or 3, can we get her to the library? So those would be my offers as alternate suggestions in lieu of really a printout that's not going to really satisfy her desire to get up to speed on a lot of the town news. The next question comes from Matt. Can we have speed humps installed at Ferncrest and Woodycrest? There are too many people speeding in the area, with many children playing in the area. Matt, don't disagree. I think if you've listened this far into the tape, you heard my comments to Steve. Number 1, we have 4-fold increased the violations, moving violations to speeders and others. We're getting some additional radar devices so that we can expand our use of those. We're going to have a traffic calming administrative committee coming out of my office for some common sense solutions. But at the end of the day, it becomes neighbor on neighbor. I certainly don't want an accident. I'm certainly, for the 100th time, for anybody who's within earshot of my voice, please slow down. This is our community. But in terms of bumps and humps, looking at the engineering, and you heard me mention Doug Wilson, speed bumps, speed humps are mostly for parking lots where the speeds, or condominium complexes or apartment complexes, where the speeds are between 5 and 10 miles an hour. What is appropriate for towns, and you really don't even see many of these, a little bit in Hartford, a couple other communities, are speed tables. The problem is those wreak havoc on our fire trucks and our police vehicles, and they generally must be removed before the winter. Also, if you don't put speed humps across both lanes, the scofflaws, those that are driving like crazy, simply go into the other lane, and then we risk more serious accidents. Also, I've done legislative research on it, and unless they're thoroughly and properly signed, if we were to put in a speed table, and let's say the sign disappeared, somebody went over it, the town would be sued for the damage in that car. So think about that for a second from my perspective. We could put this thing in, we could tear up our own vehicles, but if we tore up somebody who was going really fast, there's a fair chance that we would have to pay for the liability damage that we created related to that speed hump. Plus, Matt, my neighbor Ken requested this on our street, and I gave him the same answer. For every request for a speed hump, I have 100 others that also want it. So again, it's not an East Hartford problem. It's one that affects us. It's more of a Connecticut and a nationwide problem. We're going to try to solve it locally, but to allow government to try to speed or slow down 37,000 individual East Hartford cars, I don't know that I'm going to cite, fine, or penalize our way out of this. This is a community effort, and it starts at everyone's home. Question number 116 comes from Johnny, and I won't read the whole thing, but he brought to attention a number of things behind the linear trail at East Hartford Middle School. It used to be a beautiful path and so forth, and then he talked about some of the things around the East Hartford Middle School. So for question number 1 related to the linear path, Johnny's right. The path has fallen into disrepair, and the path is overgrown with Japanese knotweed. We cut it mostly back, and less than 2 weeks later, it's fully grown back. So completely understand your issue and completely understand the solution. It's just elusive. So I'm working with Public Works. It is high on the to-do list. Recognize that it is in a floodplain, so some of the tree damage and some of the deck damage you saw is a result of the annual rise and fall of the Connecticut River in icing. Plus the Japanese knotweed grows back. We're looking at a piece of equipment where a Parks and Rec or a Public Works employee can drive that piece of lightweight equipment with maybe an articulating arm, so we can knock the Japanese knotweed back 6 or 8 feet on both sides, and we can do it without spending a week there with 10 crews. So it's an elusive issue. We're aware of it. We've also got $700,000 of congressional funding, compliments of Congressman John Larson, to fix it. but we're having a hard time getting companies identified that aren't working on something else. It's just a crazy time in the life of the world because of inflation and the inability to find workers. Finally, Ben Whitaker from the Board of Ed responded to Johnny's other questions. And I'll read for Johnny's benefit what Ben had said. The track, which is the running track, was not part of the project except for new edging. We just acquired a tractor attachment that will allow us to keep up with the weeds better, but it had the downfall of churning up new stones from the subbase. Board of Ed's working through that issue, Johnny, related to the track. The riprap area near the building is indeed a mess, which is unacceptable. There's 2 layers of fabric under it, but we get so much blow-by weeds that the area has gotten out of control quickly. Kind of my Japanese knotweed issue as well. Looking for a solution here, as we are limited to what we can apply chemically to that area. It's in the floodplain. The former tennis court or ropes course area was a town program, and it is jointly maintained. If that program no longer needs the space, we can remove the equipment, demo the tennis courts, and just let the area grow back in. There are a couple of sheds with town equipment as well, open for ideas on the space. And Ben was really saying, Mike, is youth services still using that? So I'll reach out to Cephas Nolan and ask that question. Finally, Ben's comment is, hate it when these complaints do have some merit. So Johnny, thank you for bringing those to our attention. It's on unfortunately, the long to-do list. So that was a lot of questions, probably the better part of 30 minutes, but I'll end here. Looking forward to your questions for next week. And this is Mayor Mike from 740 Main Street in East Hartford. Thanks for submitting your questions, and we'll see you next week.